The races for governor in Virginia and New Jersey are getting tighter, with less than a month until Election Day. Political analysts say that the results could offer insight into the minds of voters ahead of the 2022 midterm elections. In Virginia, polls show a statistical tie between Democrat Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin. McAuliffe had previously served as governor from 2014 to 2018. In New Jersey, incumbent Governor Phil Murphy is looking to beat back Republican and former state assemblyman Jack Ciattarelli. Polls show Murphy holding a lead in this race, but that lead is shrinking. For more on all this, I'm joined now by CBS News political reporter Aaron Navarro. Aaron, let's look at the election in Virginia first. President Biden won the state by 10 points in 2020, but his approval rating currently stands at 45%. And this week, McAuliffe said that the president is very unpopular in Virginia right now. Do you think Mr. Biden will be a liability for McAuliffe's campaign?
Hi, thanks for having me. I think we're already seeing it play out in terms of him being a liability. Right when the pullout of Afghanistan happened, the race between McAuliffe and Youngkin started to get a little tighter. It was always within those kind of high single digits lead that McAuliffe had, but it started to get tighter right around then. And the political environment for Democrats is getting a bit more challenging. I think what President Biden does is his declining approval ratings makes it harder for someone like McAuliffe to really pull out this race.
I wonder if McAuliffe saying that President Biden is unpopular in his state, does that give a boost to the Republican Party? Does it actually hurt his challenger, or does it just give him some cover in case he doesn't win?
I think the aim there is to let Democrats know that they can't rely on Democrats turning out just because they like Biden or if they don't. So it's more of a, this is Virginia. We have our own base. I think it's more an attempt to make sure that Virginia Democrats know that this is a tight race and that if they sleep on this race and not enough Democrats turn out, then that's where you could see someone like Youngkin winning this race.
A recent poll from Emerson College found support among likely voters is at a virtual tie between McAuliffe and Youngkin, 49 and 48% respectively. How much do these numbers mean with just about a month to go?
So Republicans have been energized about this race since the midsummer. They've capped out at that level. Winning candidates for Republicans statewide, the last one was in 2009, was about 1.4 million votes, and that seems to be their top. What it means in terms of likely voter numbers for Democrats is that there's still that enthusiasm gap. They have about a couple weeks left and a lot of work to do to make sure that Democrats do turn out because there is that registration advantage. The Democrats have won here in the past decade in part because of Donald Trump, but they need to make sure that they get those Democrats out. And the likely voter numbers signal that there may be a slight decrease in that gap, but there's still work for Democrats to do in McAuliffe's campaign.
Well, let's talk about New Jersey's gubernatorial race. What advantages does Governor Murphy have in this contest?
So the main advantage is the registration advantage. There are 1 million more registered Democrats than Republicans here in New Jersey. Mr. Biden, President Biden, won the race by 16 points in New Jersey in 2020 compared to 10 points in Virginia. So there is already that. And Phil Murphy, in the polls and his approval rating, has had a bigger gap over his Republican Jack Ciattarelli. The approval ratings for him are higher there compared to someone like McAuliffe, who was governor but is a candidate coming in. So the incumbency advantage, the more clear incumbency advantage, really helps Phil Murphy in his race.
Well, the Republican challenger, Jack Ciattarelli, is trying to cast himself as a moderate Republican. And unlike in Virginia, former President Trump has not given him an endorsement. Could this benefit Ciattarelli in the long run in a state like New Jersey, distancing himself from the former president?
I think it's something that we're seeing playing out in Virginia as well. It could help him. He's playing this kind of middle-of-the-road approach a little bit more to center, or I guess left than Youngkin, but where he's trying to make sure he appeals to both Republican bases. Citarelli was the more, I guess, moderate choice out of that Republican primary in that context. So I think it could help him. And also just the state demographics, the political histories between New Jersey and Virginia are different. New Jersey, a much more solid and concrete blue state. Maybe appealing to Trump is something that could tank Citarelli's campaign if he goes too far right.
So what do Democrats need to do if they want to see a victory in both of these races? And what about Republicans? What's the strategy for them in the final stretch?
Sure. So for Republicans, the goal here is to not alienate a base of the party. So that means, at least for Youngkin and Virginia, making sure you appeal to that Trump base, making sure that they turn out, as well as trying to get suburban, more moderate voters, whether they do that through issues such as education, which Youngkin has been hitting on, or the economy. For Democrats, it's making sure that they can turn out folks in a non-presidential year, a year where Biden is not on the ticket, and a year where Trump is not on the ticket. What they're going to have to do is make sure they hit all parts of the state. For Virginia, McAuliffe is going to really have to make sure Northern Virginia, where about 37% of the electorate is, he has to make sure that those Democrats turn out and aren't asleep for this election.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.